This week on the BattleCry, two big stories I want to talk about. One is Candace Owens goes over the falls, hits bottom, down the rabbit hole. Don't follow her. We're going to talk about that. Number two is my friend Pete Hegseth under attack, your friend Pete Hegseth under attack. We're going to talk about who the man really is, why it's so important that we support it. All right, this is Winston. You guys know the dogs. It's actually really crazy in here this week, even more than usual. Winston here, he's begging for attention. Last week, I think you saw Odin. He's back there on the floor. I don't know if you can see him. That's Odin back there. Doc is right behind me. You see the big dog crate over here because Doc's not being a good boy when we're gone. He's been trying to drag his beds outside, so it's getting pretty messy around here. And so we had to lock him up. He goes to jail. And then on this side, way back there, you see the baby jail. It's not really a jail. That's a playpen when my daughter brings her granddaughter or our granddaughter Lorelei over to play while I'm in the office. It was a little crazy around here. It's a little bit messy in my office. It's just the real deal. It's what it is. So I guess we should just get started and get right at it. This is the BattleCry, and I'm your host, Mark Meckler. Happy Sunday evening. Let's get started, man. We have so much to talk about. I'm really excited. I love doing the BattleCry because I love being with you guys. You might notice I'm wearing glasses. Winston's still here. I don't have my contacts in tonight. No special reason. I just didn't wear them. You guys don't usually see me with my glasses on, but that's why I'm wearing glasses right now, because normally I'm wearing contacts, and obviously Winston doesn't want me to do this. So let's get started. I want to get started with our BattleCry call to action, because you know we're always about action, not just about talking. And so this week, I have a particular BattleCry for you. I think a bunch of you already do this, but I'm going to throw it out there if you don't, and that is read your Bible. Yep, really, read your Bible. I think this is one of the most important things that we can do on a daily basis. I know a lot of us who are believers, we don't do it. If you're not a believer, I would still say read the Bible every day. There's an incredible amount of wisdom in there. It never varies that if I open the Bible, I can open it pretty much anywhere randomly, start reading, and somehow I always find something that relates to my own life, because the Bible is really just about the human experience, right? It's about our inner relationship with God. I think it's the Word of God. But if you even just read it as a non-believer, you're going to read about the human experience. Pretty much everything that happens to human beings is in the Bible. And you get to see people dealing with real things in really good ways and sometimes not so really good ways. And you get to see the rewards and the consequences and just everything that happens in life. I love reading the Bible. It brings me a lot of peace. I know I don't necessarily do it every day. I should. Patty and I always try to start our days with prayer. And we usually start with the Lord's Prayer in the morning early by candlelight. I bought a beautiful lamp that I use for this, an oil lamp. We fire up that oil lamp, sit there with a cup of coffee or cappuccino. We say the Lord's Prayer together, usually kind of going back and forth line by line between the two of us. And then we pray. And we freeform pray, and really what I'm praying for is gratitude. I'm asking the Lord for forgiveness, and then whatever I'm looking for his guidance on and his hand on during the week specifically are the things that I'm asking for. Sometimes for myself, a lot of times for myself, a lot of times for other people, a lot of times for you guys generally, and sometimes specifically because I know there are things going on in your lives. I talk to a lot of you, and so I'm praying for you when I know something that I can be praying for. It's how I start my day. And at the end of that, Patty and I each keep a gratitude journal. And so every single day that we're out there in the living room praying by this lamplight, flip open the gratitude journal. It's got one of the Beatitudes in it. And then we write just a short gratitude, 1 line, 3 lines about things we're grateful for right now. And we've been doing this sort of way of praying in the mornings for just about a year now. I think I've filled up this month my first gratitude journal. It is profound what it will do for you. So I'm going to encourage you to read your Bible every day, be grateful every day, write down something you're grateful for every day. A lot of this, by the way, comes from one of my great mentors, Ginny Rapini, who has been with us as long as I've been doing politics, and who is one of my great mentors. And she taught me about a gratitude journal. She has thousands of pages of gratitude journal. you can bet she's a very grateful woman and lives a very happy life because of it. So read your Bible. That's the battle cry for today. All right, I want to jump right into the news. And the first thing in the fake news is, well, fake news. And the fake news is melting down. And by melting down, 2 stories in a week that they tried to peddle on us. They didn't love it because they had these seditious 6, right, who put out this thing that people shouldn't obey orders. By the way, it's not sedition legally. I just like the name seditious 6. But we have these people who are Democrats who came out and said, well, that the military shouldn't follow illegal orders. Yes, very true. But they, of course, didn't say what the illegal orders were. That didn't go very well for them. There was a lot of blowback on that. They caught a lot of heat for that. So they had to invent a couple of stories. First is an attack on Pete Hegseth that he said, kill them all, when there was a boat in the water that had been blown up. That was a narco trafficking boat. It had been blown up from the sky, I believe from a drone. And then supposedly there were survivors, and Hegseth saw them and said, kill them all. Now, people say that that's a war crime. I'm just going to tell you, in my opinion, this has nothing to do with the law, nothing to do with anything like that. These are narco traffickers who intend to kill American citizens. If he had said kill them all, from a moral point of view, that doesn't seem like a war crime to me. These are enemy combatants that are bringing drugs into the United States of America. They are known violent people. They intend to bring these into the United States of America. We're losing over 100,000 people a year to these drugs. To me, and again, just on a moral basis, kill them all, that wouldn't have bothered me, to be honest with you. That's not murder. These are people who are actual drug-carrying thugs into the United States. But, of course, that story fell apart because it was just people said, it was anonymous sourcing. And when it came right down to it, it appears that Hegseth wasn't even there when the second shot was fired. He didn't know about it until afterwards. And apparently those enemy combatants were still engaged, were still viable, were still trying to save the cargo and bring it back on board on the boat to hopefully get somebody to come rescue them. And that's when the second shot was fired. And there was an admiral who said we should do it. And I believe he's correct. I believe that even falls within the wars of law, aside from the morality of it. And so the whole story melted down. By the way, Washington Post reports the story. New York Times debunked it. Good one, New York Times. I don't usually say good one, New York Times. I don't usually say good and New York Times at all in the same sentence. But I think this is pretty incredible when the New York Times debunks the Washington Post. So that's story number 1, totally debunked within a day and a half, 2 days. Second story is about Kash Patel. And apparently Kash Patel's girlfriend now has to have an FBI escort or a group of, I don't know whether it's FBI or Secret Service, that federal law enforcement that escort her because, oh, what do you think? She's Kash Patel's girlfriend. She's getting death threats all the time, and she has to be very careful. So they've got a protective detail on her. The story is that she and some of her friends were out drinking. One of the girlfriends got really drunk and had to have a law enforcement escort home. So outrage, right? I'm not outraged. Are you outraged by that? So a young woman is out at a bar with her friends, maybe has a little bit too much to drink, and the law enforcement who are escorting her make sure she gets home safely. And that's a problem, I guess, to these folks on the left, because maybe they would have rather that she was drunk and got in an Uber by herself, maybe to be taken advantage of by somebody, or to be sexually assaulted. Maybe they wanted her to walk home. Maybe they wanted her to drive home. Like, I don't even have a problem with this story, even if it were true. But the reality is, what a shock. Fake news, not true. Totally debunked. There's nobody that can corroborate this story. It's fallen apart as fast as the story hit the press. The fake news has been shamed again. Well, if they had any shame, they were shamed again. They have no shame. They don't care. They make this stuff up because they are just the militarized press against the right. And they never write these stories about the left. They never make this stuff up about the left. They never tell true bad things about the left. This is just a paid arm of the Democrat Party. This is a machine, a press machine for the far left, for the progressives, for the Democrat Party. And they would be shamed if they had any shame, but they don't. And by the way, this isn't good for the country. I don't like this. We should have a media that's just independent. That's really important. That's what the press is intended to be, right? They're intended to be this independent voice that holds powerful people to account when they do bad things. Not some powerful people, not a particular party with powerful people, not a particular ideology with powerful people who have that ideology, but powerful people. And that's not what the legacy media does anymore. Thank God we don't have to rely just on the legacy media anymore. Thank God there's real media out there doing real work on the right. Some of them partisan, but some of them just doing real work, like John Solomon at Just the News, doing just news, right? Or I would even say at this point, it looks like maybe Barry Weiss at CBS, the new newsroom editor, executive editor at CBS, doing a good job. Seems like she's forcing those guys to the middle. I just saw an announcement that she's going to be doing a live interview with Erica Kirk on CBS. And she says because she was so blown away by Erica Kirk's forgiveness of Charlie's murderer that she really wanted to talk to her and she really wanted to introduce her to the American people. I think this is an incredible opportunity for Americans to come together again. I think Barry Weiss, by the way, no conservative. Barry Weiss, I believe, is a married lesbian who is probably mostly left, but just happens to believe in free speech and honest reporting. I think this is a good thing. That's a good thing for America. These lying, thieving scum and the rest of the press, not a good thing for America. Well, a new story came out, and this is one that was covered up, buried, smothered by the media until recently. The J6 pipe bomber has been arrested. Now, this always seemed weird to me. I don't know about you. We've got somebody on video planting these pipe bombs. We've got apparently law enforcement officers going by after the bombs are planted. And for 5 years, they can't figure out who this was. We have the person on videotape. They can't figure out who it is. Thousands of clues, thousands of pages of documentation. Unbelievably, Joe Biden's FBI couldn't figure it out. FBI, led by Christopher Wray, couldn't figure it out. Guess what? They figured it out. Under Kash Patel, they actually did figure it out. They got to the bottom of the story, and the story was that a guy by the name of Brian Cole is the guy who is the J6 pipe bomber, or that's the guy that's been arrested and formally accused of being the J6 pipe bomber, planted these pipe bombs at the DNC, at the RNC. Thank God they didn't go off. This guy, Brian Cole, according to Jake Tapper, he gave a very succinct description of him. He's white. Have you seen the pictures? I don't even know how to say this, but no, he's not even close to white. I mean, he's black. He's clearly a black man. So I don't know what Jake Tapper is drinking before he does his news reports, but he reported this guy's white. The guy's not white, and the guy works for a bail bond company that his dad founded. So I think he owns it with his dad. Then their specialty is bailing out illegal aliens who get arrested by ICE. Apparently, they've been BLM supporters. They've been leftists, known leftists for a long time. And so you have a black leftist BLM supporting, bond bailing, illegal immigrant getting out of jail guy who is, according to the left now, wait for it, drum roll, MAGA. That's right, he's MAGA. Yeah, he thought the elections were fixed. He's all MAGA all the time, probably wears a red hat. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he was one of the guys that beat up Jesse Smollett when he faked his, this is so ridiculous. The guy is clearly who he is. It was clearly not that hard for the FBI to find him when they wanted to find him. They didn't want to find him previously. Why? Because I'm convinced they knew who he was. They probably had identified him. They had cell phone tracking records. They had video records. The license plate of his car was tracked to the area. They had credit card receipts showing him buying bomb making materials. But Biden's FBI couldn't find him. Yeah, they could. They found him. They just didn't want you to know because the narrative couldn't be he was MAGA or he was white or he was a Nazi white supremacist. They couldn't do that narrative, so they didn't want to arrest the guy. So now he's under arrest. He's being prosecuted. Remember, when you hear it in the media, he's white, he's MAGA. Pretty soon he's going to be your grandma. It's going to be unbelievable. So I think this is going to be an incredible scandal as the lid blows off this thing. We get to look at behind the scenes who told the FBI not to find this guy. Because I believe somebody told him not to find this guy. It may go as high as Christopher Wray. I don't know. Maybe it goes up higher in the Biden administration. But this was absolutely political. Speaking of politics, Tim Walz is very upset right now. You might remember Tim Walz as the total weirdo dude that tried to appeal to manly men as he was running for vice president, but was not anything he was trying to appeal to. Anyway, he's really upset right now because people are calling him, because of President Trump, they're calling him a retard. And so let's talk about this word retard, because this has now been made very controversial. There are so many words in the English language that have been driven out of use because we've been told they're politically incorrect, right? Well, that's just cultural Marxism. And the word retard, you know what it means. I know what it means. We all know what it means. It means somebody who's dumb or lame or ridiculous. And what they're trying to tell you, what the left, the police, the thought police, the speech police, they're trying to tell you that when we do this, we are insulting people who are mentally handicapped. By the way, I've never heard in my life that term used about somebody who is mentally handicapped. It's just not used. People will say they're mentally handicapped, or they're mentally disabled, or they're disabled. Polite ways to say that they're suffering from some disabling condition. I've never heard, and I'm not saying and nobody's ever said it, but I've never heard in my life people say that about somebody who has an emotional or mental disability. But I have heard it said many times growing up, and obviously even a lot more recently, about people who are just lame or ridiculous or dumb or doing stupid things or offensive things. People say that that's retarded. That person's a retard. So this has now come back into common use. And I'm actually glad it has, because it just shows we're recapturing language from the woke left. And so Donald Trump called Tim Walz a retard, or said he was retarded. The reporters were obviously appalled. I know Donald Trump does this a lot for effect. Well, now Tim Walz is very upset because people are driving by his house and apparently yelling out of their car. I don't even know if this is true. This is what Tim Walz says, yelling out of their car, retard, as they drive by his house. And he's really upset about these things, about this being said. Well, I mean, one, I understand it. You wouldn't want people driving by your house calling you a retard. That probably is offensive. I think it's kind of funny in his case. But what he says is these things begin with taunts and then they go to violence. They begin with taunts and then they go to violence. Really? 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 Tim, my man, this is where you're going to go. You who called ICE Gestapo. You who's called Trump a bastard. You who called Elon Musk a dipshit. You, pardon my language there, you who called Trump a son of a bee. You, constantly name calling while you're on the campaign trail. You and your kind who are constantly demonizing anybody on the right, calling us Nazis, calling us Neanderthals, misogynists, homophobes, Islamophobes. Well, yeah, we probably are afraid of Islam. So that one might be true. Maybe that's an appropriate name. But you who calls us all these names, now you're trying to say that we shouldn't call names because it leads to violence. And by the way, on your side, it has led to violence because of people like you calling ICE terrible things, calling them Gestapo, calling them Nazis, making fun of them, attacking them, abusing them. We had 2 National Guard shot. We had ICE agents shot a couple of months ago. We have violence up like 8,000% against ICE agents because you are calling them names. But you're calling them things way worse than retard, Nazi, Gestapo, killers, like horrible things. So, Tim, yeah, I don't want to hear about you feeling bad because people are driving by your house calling you a retard. I don't really care. Speaking of retards, let's go to Candace Owen. Candace Owens has become, well, let's just say she rode the boat over the falls and she's gone down to the bottom. She is a crazy person. She is completely nuts. But I would say that she's more than that. I've known Candace for a very long time. I knew her personally back in the early days when she was just a rising star. She's not a nice person. She's a bad person. I say this from personal experience. She's an evil person. I say this from experience of a lot of people that I know that have had up close and personal experiences with her. And so recently, because she says that she and Charlie Kirk were such close friends and she loved him so much and he loved her so much. She's doing everything she can. She says this to destroy Turning Point USA, his legacy, the organization he created, the organization that he poured his life and soul into, the organization that he got killed for building. Candace has said she's going to destroy it. That's what Candace is doing now. That's evil. And she's accused all the people closest to Charlie of being at least complicit in or benefiting from Charlie's death. And I know I hear people say, oh, have you heard? Are you listening to her? All the stuff she says, she's bringing the receipts. No, she's not. She's not. And I have listened. She uses innuendo. She says, I'm just asking. She says things that are blatantly untrue. And then she acts like if you don't believe her, you're an idiot. If you don't believe her, you're the retard. If you don't believe her, it's because you just are in on the scam, or you've been bought, or you're being paid by the Israelis. That's one of her big ones. You're just a crazy Jew lover. This woman is evil, and she's doing evil things. And this week, she went over the fall. She said that she wanted to talk to and debate and go head to head with the leaders of Turning Point anywhere, anytime, any place, you name it. That's what she said. And so you know what they finally did? After 3 months of silence in the face of her abuse, attacks, slander, vitriol, hatred, disgusting, vile stuff, what did they do after 3 months of being silent? They finally said, okay, all right, tomorrow, noon on our show. You say your part, and we'll say our part. And she had said, anytime, any place, anywhere, I'm in. And then you know what she did? She did what cowards do. She turned and she ran. What'd she do? She said, oh, I can't believe you didn't call me up. You just posted this on X. I can't believe it. I'm not doing that. And she bailed. Anytime, any place is what she said. And then when they named the time and place, she bailed. She's pathetic. She's cruel. She's mean. She's vicious. She's a liar. I have personal experience with her. I'm speaking from personal experience, not just what I see publicly. And what I see publicly is way worse than what I knew personally. And a lot of people that I knew personally have said about her. I know personally what Charlie Kirk said about her. I'm not going to repeat it. It was in private conversations between me and Charlie. I went hunting with Charlie. Charlie told me what he thought of Candace Owens. It wasn't very much different from what I think of Candace Owens. But I'm not going to do what she does and pretend to show you text messages. By the way, she shows text messages and she'll say, see, I have the receipts. I challenge you, go on to Grok or ChatGPT or whatever you use and type in how easy it is to fake text messages. And what you'll find is without knowing anything in under 2 minutes, you can create picture perfect text messages, an entire thread with timestamps, the whole deal that you couldn't tell are fake without a forensic investigation, without going to the carrier and seeing if those texts exist. So she shows text messages. I don't believe anything that comes out of that woman's mouth. And I'm sick and tired of her. She's dividing the Republican Party. She's dividing conservatives. She's getting rich doing it, and she's doing it with hate and vitriol, claiming to be a Christian, viciously attacking people. You might be able to tell what I think of Candace Owens. I'm just telling you, if you are following her, you are following her down a very dark and deep rabbit hole. She's destroying our chance to save the Republic. And I suggest you climb out of that rabbit hole if you're following her. Stop following her. Stop listening to her. There's nothing but darkness there to be found. Yeah. You can tell what I think about that. I do get a little worked up about it. I would say a lot of the same stuff about Tucker Carlson at this point. Maybe we'll talk about Tucker next week. I can only take so much in 1 week. So we're going to switch to good news. Good news in Florida. If you want to see how a state should be governed, just look at Florida. Florida, a year ago, banned cell phones in school. Like, no cell phones in school. Does that seem like a crazy idea? I asked the question, like, what good are cell phones doing our kids in school? Anything? Is there any good that's coming out of having our kids have cell phone in school? I don't think so. I'm not aware of the use case. I'm not aware of the study that says kids are smarter, kids are more well-adjusted, kids are happier, kids are less suicidal, kids are less obsessed with their looks, kids are looking at less porn because they have cell phones in school. No, cell phones in school are bad. We all know that. It's an unequivocal bad. So Florida bans them. And what do you think happened to the test scores in Florida? One guess. Anybody? Yes, that's right. Test scores went up. Yeah, test scores went up. So why the heck don't we do this in every school in the nation? I don't know. I'm waiting. If you have kids in school, you ought to talk to your school and you ought to say you ought to ban cell phones. If your kids are taking their cell phones to school, don't let them take their cell phones to school. It's not appropriate. They don't need them at school. You survived when you were in school without a cell phone, right? I did. You did. Pretty much the vast majority of people who are watching me right now survive without their cell phones in school. Kids don't need a cell phone in school. It's bad for them. It's bad for their brains. It's bad for their hearts. Don't give your kids a cell phone in school. And frankly, don't you give your kids a cell phone until they're old enough to handle it. And then be very careful what they're watching and what they're doing. That is a very dangerous toy. But the good news is take them away, test scores go up. All right, before we go to Q&A, I want to close with this. I talked early on about Pete Hegseth and the attacks against him. And full disclosure, I consider Pete Hegseth a friend. I've known Pete for a long time, probably 13 years, 12 years. Pete reached out to Convention of States, wanted to help support us. This is a little story about what a great guy Pete Hegseth is. He could have reached out to me directly. I'm easy to find. We had mutual friends. At the time, I was on Fox pretty regularly. I had never met him, but he didn't. Instead, he sent an email from Pete Hegseth at Fox and Friends or at Fox to our info@Convention of States box. And thank God for a dear woman who answers all of our emails. Her name is Cindy Nation, and she is incredible, one of a kind. She knows as much about Convention of States as anybody in the world because she looks at all of your emails. She can't answer all of them. She answers the ones that she thinks we need to answer. Sometimes she sends them to me. So one day I get a message from Cindy. She said, I have an email I think you should see. She said, I think it really is from Pete Hegseth at Fox and Friends. And sure enough, I look at it. It looks legit. So I write back to him, and it's him. And I got a chance to meet him. I went to New York. I was doing a bunch of stuff there. I went to Fox. He sat down with me in the cafeteria in the Fox building and spent about 2.5 hours there with me and Patty. I was blown away. Like, he's not busy, right? And I asked him, why did you send that message to the info at box when you could have reached out to me? And he said, because I didn't want to talk to you if you weren't for real. He said, I've run a nonprofit. Most nonprofits, their info at box just goes into the garbage. It's like spam. And nobody cares. Nobody really cares about the grassroots. And the fact that you answered it and realized it was me and called me, that was the litmus test, or I wasn't interested. Now, who does that? What famous person does that? That tells you the character of the man. I've had a chance to meet his wife. She's a wonderful woman. They seem to have a beautiful relationship. People will attack Pete for his background. I know he's been through a divorce. I know all that stuff. I know he had his problems when he came home from the military. I know all that stuff. Who do you want as Secretary of Defense? You know who I want? I want a guy who loves the warriors. I want a guy who, like, maybe has a combat infantryman badge. I want a guy who's seen what happens when people go into combat. I want the guy who has mud on his boots. I don't want a guy who made it into the upper echelons of the military, who became a Pentagon prince. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for a guy who understands what it's like to be in the field and fight a war. A guy who understands lethality. He talks a lot about that. I want a guy who's going to have the backs of his men and women that are on the battlefield. That's what I want. I want a guy who doesn't love Washington, D.C. I want a guy who doesn't want to be inside the Beltway. I want a guy who isn't in the pockets of the defense contractors. I want a warrior. I want a guy who suffered with the troops in the field, who came back damaged like so many guys come back from the field. That's the guy that I want in charge of the Department of War. That's the guy. I want a guy I can trust. I want a guy that our warriors can trust. That's who Pete Hegseth is. He's that guy. In my lifetime, he's the guy. There is no other Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War that can hold a candle to Pete Hegseth, in my opinion. And that's why they're after him. That's why the deep state is after him. That's why the military brass is sometimes after him. That's why the contractors are after him. That's why you're going to see smear campaign after smear campaign after smear campaign to get him. Because what do they want? They want a woke military. They want a gay military. They want a transgender military. They want a weak military. I want a guy who understands that we're under threat, that Russia is a threat, that China is a threat, that the Islamic terrorists are a threat, and that we have to be lethal, and we have to be accurate, and we have to be armed, and we have to be trained. We have to be ready to kill our enemies. That's the guy that I want in the field. And that's Pete Hegseth. They're going to keep coming after him. And you and me and everybody who believes in the things I just said, we need to support him. You need to be prepared to understand that when the attacks come, I'm going to say 99 to 100% of the time, they're going to be false smears. And we start from that premise. We stand with our friend, Pete Hegseth. Pete, if you're watching, we love you. I can tell you that we at COS have your back. All right. So we're going to go to Q&A, but before we go to Q&A, a couple things to say. Number one, I want to remind you, join the Patriots Club today with a recurring gift of any amount. We're going to ship you a free limited edition heirloom ornament. They're super cool. Shows the signing of the Declaration of Independence. All the guys gathered around beautiful white ceramic with the blue print on the ceramic. It is gorgeous. Hand-drawn illustration of the signing. It's designed by one of our COS volunteers here in Texas, Edna Kruger. She's an incredible, fine artist, amazing woman, limited edition. Give before the clock strikes midnight for the new year, and your gift is going to be matched by a very generous donor. We're really blessed to have this. So if you go to conventionofstates.com/give2025, you're going to get to do that. Don't let the big tech overlords win. Like this video, hit the the subscribe button, ring the notification bell. Then you'll always get the battle cry. And some days I'll have the dogs. Some days I won't. Some days I'll wear my glasses. Some days I won't. But you will be here with me, which is where you should be. If you want to get this into your inbox, get more of this kind of information on your email list, go to conventionofstates.com/battlecry list. And also, if you want to ask me questions, you can go to www.conventionofstates.com/askmark. Anything, really, whatever it is. I like the weird questions. All right, Sharon Vincenzi says, Mark, I'd like to hear your comments about the resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, I think I did this already once before, so I'm going to summarize about the resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm glad she's gone. She didn't understand politics. She hated on President Trump publicly. That's a terrible thing to do from inside the party. She caused all kinds of problems inside the caucus. Look, I don't necessarily like this, but politics are a team sport. If you're going to be in Congress, you got to learn to play with the team. If you can't play with the team, you shouldn't be in Congress. It's not a soloist sport. She was building her social media profile. And then ultimately, when she struck out for me is when she went on The View and she went on CNN and she went on all these leftist outlets and went after Republicans in Congress, blamed Republicans for the shutdown when it was the Schumer shutdown. Not just technically, not just legally, but they wanted the shutdown, and she blamed Republicans. So what I think about Marjorie Taylor Greene being gone, I hope I never have to think about her again. Lydia Lascol asks, what do you tell people who don't trust their state legislatures? You are right. You're right. No, of course you shouldn't trust your state legislature. They're made up of human beings. They're made up of politicians, a form of human beings, sort of. And you shouldn't trust them because you should hold them accountable. No person in a position of power should be, quote unquote, trusted. It's sort of trust but verify, right? It's you elect them to do the things they say they're going to do, and then you keep an eye on them. And because sometimes people will say, well, Mark, we're going to bring power back to the states, but I don't like my state legislature. Right. You shouldn't. That's good. Don't trust them. Hold them accountable. But if we bring power from the federal government back to the state legislature, that's closer to you. You can meet with your state legislator. You could literally sit down and have a cup of coffee with your state legislator. You can go to their office. You're not going to get that with your congressman, not unless you're a big donor. You're certainly not going to get it with your federal senator. But here in your own state, Yeah, you can hold them accountable. So no, don't trust them. Hold them accountable. Keep them close. Help them if they're good. But trust is not part of our political system. It just isn't. Corey Meyer says, how many problems would it solve to repeal the 17th Amendment? Is it something that could be accomplished by this project? The answer is it could, theoretically. The 17th Amendment is the amendment that said we are directly electing our federal senators. Instead of having them appointed by the state legislatures the way they used to be, we elect them directly. Terrible problem. This happened in 1913, really bad year for politics. And so what we said is, instead of having our state legislatures nominate and send somebody to Washington, D.C. to operate on their behalf, we're going to elect them directly. Now, first of all, that's ridiculous. Why is it ridiculous? Because we already have people to represent us in Washington, D.C. They are called representatives. The senator's job was to represent the state as an entity. And primarily their job was to go to Washington, D.C. and just say, no, you can't do that. No, you're infringing on the rights of our citizens. No, you're infringing on state authority. No, we're not going to pay those taxes to you. No. In fact, I think if you had a senator back then and you taught them one word and the word was no, maybe they didn't even speak English. No, that's all they needed to know. And once we broke that with the 17th Amendment and said we're going to elect them directly, I've got to ask you a question. If you're from like Texas, where I'm from, and I think our population is 38 million, California's maybe 40 million, 41 million now. How can one person represent all of those interests in a state? They can't. That's why you have representatives, and we don't have enough of those either. So could we repeal it? Technically, we could repeal it. Would I want to repeal it? I would absolutely want to repeal it. Do I think we can? No. The reason I don't think we can is because people aren't going to like the idea of losing their right to vote for their senator. And the narrative against it is you're going to lose, you're going to take away my right to vote for my senator. That sounds terrible. And then you got to explain it. And I think in the explaining, we're going to lose that fight. There's an alternative that I actually like, which is give the state legislatures the right of recall over senators. Because I think the American people would like that. Your senator goes off to Washington, D.C., and he drinks from the Potomac. He's in the swamp. He becomes a swamp creature. You want to be able to bring him home or her home before 6 years. So give the state legislatures the right of recall. I think that would be a very good idea, and I think that's doable. But look, if we could repeal it completely, it would solve a lot of problems, because part of the problem is that these senators are loyal to Washington, D.C., and they're not loyal to the states they come from. So I think it would be very helpful if we could repeal the 17th Amendment. I don't think we can. One more question. Should we repeal the filibuster? Should we get rid of the filibuster in the Senate? I'm going to give a little bit of a nuanced answer. I'm going to say yes, we should. We absolutely should. For sure, 100% right now, immediately. That doesn't sound like much nuance. The reason I say that is because I do believe in the filibuster. Do you know that when the Senate was first constituted, it took 100% agreement to get to a vote? Like everybody had to agree in advance that we were going to allow this to a vote, or there would be no vote. And then we pushed it down to this 60 vote threshold for the filibuster over time. And I think that's a healthy balance that gives the minority party in the Senate some power. And I like that. I think the minority party should have some power. The House is meant to be a majoritarian institution. The Senate was supposed to be a place for dialogue and deliberation. So I like the filibuster, but this is where the caveat comes in. Absolutely, the Democrats are going to repeal the filibuster as soon as they take the Senate. 100%, no matter what. They say it. They say it without equivocation. They don't hide it. They're going to do it. So why are we surrendering? Right now, the Republicans and Donald Trump need to get the agenda done. Trump is doing everything he can, from what I can tell, but we got a problem in the House and in the Senate. They're not getting it done. And so I would recommend that we remove the filibuster, because we're going to lose the filibuster when the Democrats take over anyway, whenever that is. I worry about that. We're going to lose the filibuster because they're going to take it away and they're going to ram everything down our throats. So we should do it now. We should get it done right now. Let's get it done before it's too late. Let's get it done before the midterms for sure, so we can accomplish a whole bunch of stuff before the midterms. All right, I want to remind you that what we started with, which is read your Bible. I have a whole bunch of Bibles over here on my shelf. Anybody needs a loaner, I got a bunch of Bibles. Go and get yourself a Bible. You can go to your local church. You can pick one up for free. You probably got one on your shelf. If it's dusty, dust it off. Read what's in it. You're going to get some wisdom. It's going to make your heart feel better. I love you guys. That's the battle cry for this week. We'll see you next Sunday night.